Well, hi everybody, wherever you may be today. This is Frank Leone. You probably know who I am by now. And this is episode number 19, really moving along of the 77 Groups series on YouTube that's reflecting chapters in each of our books. Lead speaker today, and I am speaking on a topic called Show Your Audience Genuine Appreciation. It reflects chapter 40 in my book, 77 Ways to Perfect Your Communication Skills, which, if you look behind me, there's 3 copies, which I suggest everybody consider. And Mitch has 2, so there's 5 between us. So if you want to be like Mitch and me, you'll get yourself 5 books, 5 copies, and we'll be off and running. But I am going to be talking about chapter 40 for those of you that have the book. It's always a good idea to look at the chapter and then listen to what I have to say, or vice versa. So that's it, and I'll be getting into it in a moment. Back to my co-host here, Mitch Goddard.
Hey, Frank. Thanks. And again, my name's Mitch Goddard, Frank's partner and co-founder of the 77 Group. And just want a very brief overview of what we're doing in our YouTube experience here. Frank's book, 77 Ways to Perfect Your Communication Skills, Enhancing Your Personal and Professional Relationships, cobbling nicely with my upcoming book, 77 Principles, Tips, and Takeaways for Exceptional Leaders, due out later this year. But more impressively, and again, looking at the books behind us, you can get your copy of Frank's book anytime. Just go to our website, 77grp.com, and pick up a copy of fun, easy read, easy to digest principles that you can put into practice first day. So make sure you pick yourself up a copy. And like Frank says, it goes well with what we're doing here on our YouTube channel. So remember, each week, Frank's got the odd weeks. We talk about communication. Even weeks, next week, episode 20, can't believe it, but episode 20, I'll be talking about leadership. And each episode, we pick up, we interact with our viewers, we take questions, and we will select the question of the week and invite that questioner to a phone call with us, or with one of us, to expand further on the topic, or to just talk in general. About 15, 20 minutes on the phone, share some thoughts, experience, and ideas with our viewers, and that's available if you write the right question, okay, or the question of the week. Also, we ask that you subscribe, click that button down at the bottom of the screen, and make sure you tell your friends so they can subscribe too, and together you'll never miss an episode of the 77 Group. Leave a comment. We love the interaction. And of course, send us your questions. And with that, I'm happy to shoot it back to my good friend and partner, Frank Leone, for today's topic.
Thank you, Mitch. And again, the title of the topic is Show Your Audience Genuine Appreciation. And I stress 2 words of those 5, genuine and appreciation. And we'll get into each of them, but I think the most important salient point here is that, as a person that's spoken before many groups, many times for many years, I never failed to appreciate the fact that people are out there sitting, looking at me, came to hear me speak for whatever reason. And I want to make sure that I convey that feeling I have to those that were kind enough to come. And that's really what it's all about. The book covers communication in a lot of different ways. One-on-one communications, small group communications, meeting communications, email communications, social media communication, and speaking to groups. And this particular chapter, chapter 40 in the book, is in a subsection of the book that deals with public speaking, although as you will see, the principles that we'll be talking about can be extended to other areas as well. So as we usually do, there are 5 tips that we share with every YouTube presentation. Multiply it times 77 chapters, and that is boom, 300 and, I'm getting all confused here, 77 times 5 is 365 tips. Multiply it times 2 because Mitch is doing it as well. And we're going to have over 700 tips for you by the time everything is said and done. But we'd like to really whittle things down to a finite number of tips each week, so you can walk away from this period of time with a grip on the topic, but without too much confusion regarding all different thoughts and ideas. So are you ready for my first tip, Mitch?
Please, Frank, I'm sitting here waiting. Can't wait. Go ahead and launch number one for us.
You will not have to wait long because I am ready. Tip number 1 is be genuine. Go beyond hollow words. And that is so critical. You know, you can spot it a mile away. When somebody is thanking you for something and they are doing it because they need to do it, not because they really, really mean it. To me, at least, more often than not, that comes through as artificial, contrived, and pretty transparent to me. So it's really critical to go beyond hollow words and train yourself to actively look for and think of what positive thought you can share with a given audience. And we'll be talking about some of the specifics in a bit, but to me, the most critical thing is always ask yourself before you do any sort of presentation, or this may apply to a small group or meeting, or it may even apply to a single individual who was kind enough to provide their time for a telephone call with you. It applies across the board to all of these things. But having said that, the most important thing is to find some reason that you're really appreciative. It's got to be genuine. So that's tip number 1.
Excellent point, Frank. And you know, you're right. They sense dynamics and they can spot a phony a mile away. So being sincere, being genuine really resonates with people. Thanks for that one. What do you got for number 2?
Tip number 2, 2 words, be humble. And a sort of recurring theme throughout a lot of my communication tips. And I believe Mitch addresses it in his leadership work as well, because indeed a great leader should be a genuinely humble leader as well. But that showing of humility while you are thanking your audience is critical as well. It is one thing to thank an audience, but still in some way come across as being slightly superior to that audience. There's another thing to thank an audience and make them understand and feel that you are on an equal ground with that audience. And it's that humility that I am no better than you that really comes across, sparks the audience interest in what you're going to say, and legitimizes everything that you're going to say from that point on. So tip number 2, be humble.
Excellent. Yeah, and like you said, that's kind of a reoccurring theme with many of our tips between the two of us. Humility just makes you embraceable and relatable to your audience. So great tip there, Frank. How about number 3?
Number 3 is find common ground. For example, the city or the group's purpose. In other words, look for something that is appropriate to the vast majority, if not the entirety, of your audience. And they're usually there for a reason. They're usually from the same geographical location, or they're in the same profession, or they're there because of an interest in something that you're going to be talking about. Well, any of those areas would suggest that you can pick that as the common ground that you want to thank them for. For example, my career was largely in the healthcare sector, and I've spoken hundreds upon hundreds of times before hundreds and hundreds of groups. And many times those groups were physicians, or they were nurses, or in my aeromedical transport days, they were first responder organizations. And it doesn't take a whole lot of thinking to realize what they bring to the table and what you can thank them for. They are there for the public good. They're there for the health and safety and welfare of the greater population. They are there for me. They are there for you. And you want to be thinking in those terms, but then you want to articulate that. And the more you think about it, the more you can realize, my gosh, they really are valuable. This is a group of nurses. The largest audience that I ever spoke to was in the four figures. It was over 1,000. Was a group of occupational health nurses. I believe it was in Las Vegas. It was in Las Vegas, in fact. I remember looking at that audience and saying, you know what, you guys make this healthcare world tick, and you're vastly underrated and undervalued often, but you're the ones that are out there making it go every day. And I am just honored to be standing in front of you with the opportunity to share some thoughts with you. So thank you for coming. And again, my hats off to every single person in this room for what you do each and every day. That's genuine. That's how I feel. But I had to put a little thought into it and say, okay, this is a nurse group. What do they really mean to me? So it's really important to look for that common ground across everybody in the room and ask yourself, you know, what good do they bring to the table? And by God, thank them for that common good.
Excellent.
Mitch?
Yeah, and really no better way to capture their attention and really ignite a connection with your audience. Great tip there, Frank. How about number 4? Oh.
Number 4 is an end by stating your appreciation. And the key point here is you do not want to state it once. You want to state it twice. As I cover elsewhere in the book, the two things that people tend to remember most about a presentation is the start of it and the end of it. The start of it sets the table. It's the table setter for everything that's to follow. It's what grabs their attention. It's what gets them on your side. The end of it is the lasting impression, the thing they remember the next morning when they think about what you said the previous day. So if you're going to thank them as you should right at the beginning to win them over and to show that appreciation right from the start, you also want to make sure that you also repeat it at the end. It doesn't have to be long and dramatic. It doesn't have to be in depth, but it can be something akin to, going back to my nurse example, that once again, I want to remind you how much respect I have for the nursing profession and what a pleasure it has been to have the opportunity to speak to all of you today. So begin and end with your appreciation. Tip number 4.
Perfect. And, you know, if you really want to leave them with something memorable, another great tip there, Frank. Hey, close us out. What's number 5 got for us?
Tip number 5 is apply these principles to both groups, but also to individuals. Apply with both groups and individuals. You know, it's easy with groups. You know, you're standing in front of them, there's a commonality and so forth. Oftentimes, we don't necessarily express sufficient value for the person we're dealing with, whoever that person may be. It can be somebody you talk to frequently. It can be somebody it's a one-time event that you're speaking with them. But for God's sakes, think about what's good about them, what is good about what they do, what is good about your relationship or your potential relationship, and without being, you know, overly mushy about it, to use a word that my man Mitch throws in there every now and then, let them know. Because it's much the same principle. When you're dealing with somebody else, if you can start off with genuine, that word in bold, flashing neon lights, praise, then it makes that relationship going forward much more manageable. And if you can end it, you're ending it on a high note. So again, tip number 5 is apply with both groups and individuals. And to summarize, we always like to summarize the 5 tips and have them scroll across the screen. So here's my 5 tips. Are you ready, Mitch?
Please, let her rip, Frank.
A little 5-pack from Mr. Mitch. Tip
go.
number 1, be genuine. Go beyond hollow words. Tip number 2, be humble. Tip number 3, find common ground. For example, the city or the group's purpose. Tip number 4, begin and end by stating your appreciation. And tip number 5, apply these principles with both groups and individuals. 5 tips to take with you on this topic.
Excellent work again, as always, Frank. And anybody that aspires to do any kind of public speaking, or as Frank alludes to, any communication, even on an individual level, these are great tips, easy to apply, and you're getting them right from the expert's mouth. He's got the experience and background, and I can attest to this because I've been a member in many of those audiences listening to Frank talk. So great tips all, Frank, as usual. And so at this time, I just want to remind you that we'll be back here next week. I'll be taking the lead. We'll be talking about leadership, in which our topic will be the role model. You don't want to miss that one. That's coming next week. We also ask that you subscribe so you don't miss any of our 77 group content, and leave a comment and hit that like button. Let us know that we're on the right track. Also, remember to submit a question, because each week the winning question gets a prize, a free phone call with either Frank or myself. So with that, hey, let's send it back to Frank and let's find out who this week's winner is.
Okay, and there is a winner this week. And before I state this exciting news, I wanted to also remind you that when you, if you do want to get in touch with us for any reason, it's very easy to remember. I'm Frank at 77grp, as in 77group.com, and Mitch is Mitch at 77grp.com. So we would certainly welcome your contacts about anything. You can comment on the underneath the YouTube presentation screen, but you can also communicate with us directly if that's your preference. And winners of the best question of the week have come from both pots. And I think, in fact, I've heard Mitch say that you got at least one, maybe even a second, from LinkedIn. So, I guess, what are those called? iMessages or iMail?
Instant messages, I believe.
It's something like that on LinkedIn. But in any event, all of that said, the question this week comes from Roy Bryson. Thank you, Roy. And Roy is from Colorado, which is, while I'm in a complimenting mood, what a absolutely gorgeous, beautiful state Colorado is. Every corner of it is beautiful. It's a gorgeous state. So, Roy, you're living in a good place. But Roy went back to episode number 17 and asked the question. It's sort of it's an interesting question. It's a fair question. He said, do you really lock people out of meetings if they are late? It seems to be overly harsh. Well, Roy, sometimes I have, sometimes I haven't. And in the haven'ts, they've had to endure an even worse disgrace, getting a mean look from me when they come walking in the meeting at 8:02. But the fact of the matter is, it's not a trivial point, and I want to review it again. For those of you that did not see episode 17, and I thought it was a good one, you ought to take a look. If I don't say so in my humble self, there I am violating tip number 2, be humble, is that I pointed out that you got to make people take meetings seriously right from the get-go. And an incredible amount of time is wasted when there's an 8 o'clock meeting and the last people wander in at 8:15, and you spend the first 15 minutes chit-chatting about the ball game last night. And that's just not the way to conduct business. Plus, it sort of creates a lackadaisical atmosphere, which you don't want either. So although I'm a real softy in so many ways, when it comes to starting meetings on time, I want to set an example that this is serious and that and that we aren't going to accept tardiness at these meetings. And I think it's a real good way. I'll tell you what, you lock a person or two out of that room once or twice, you know, it's probably not going to happen very often again by anybody, either the people that were locked out or the people that were in the room watching the locked out people knock on the door, you tell them to go away. Yeah. So a good question, Roy. And indeed, it's not, you know, there's a lot of things that aren't cast in concrete in this world, and that's certainly one of them. But it's not a bad idea if you can do it. So I lean toward doing it more often than not. So thank you, Roy, and again, let's see it on the screen, Frank at 77grp.com. Just send me an email and let me know how we can get in touch, and we'll move forward from there. Okay, back to you, Mitch.
Hey, great question, Roy, and great response, Frank. I'm in your camp on this one. Just a little bit of discipline and setting the standard. You know, this is how we do business here. Lackadaisical can lead to errors and mistakes, and that just creates more work for everybody. So, great tip there. All right. So, and finally, as we always do, a quick reminder. Frank's book available at the 77grp.com. Go to our bookshelf or head on over to Amazon. Pick up your copy there. Available in different formats, so make sure you get yours soon. And then finally, Frank, like I said, we always like to do, close with a thought of the day, a closing thought. And with that, I'll send it back to you. What do you got?
Got two words: embrace nature. And why I'm going here this particular week is that as we are recording this in mid-August of 2020, it is a very, very difficult time for an awful lot of people. I'm personally convinced that bad times breed good times to follow. And I think we're going to come out of this rather tragic, challenging year all the better for it at some point. But the fact of the matter is there are a great many people that are having very, very significant economic challenges. There are many people that are having health challenges, have lost loved ones, or that are just going through their daily lives out of fear and paranoia that they or their loved ones may get infected. So there's a lot going on right now. And I think it's all the more important to realize that sometimes God's greatest gifts in life are free. And whether it's looking up at a starry night, or whether it's seeing a beautiful tree, or watching a bird fly, or seeing flowers, or seeing the wonderful bodies of water that pepper the world, whether it's oceans or lakes or rivers or streams or whatever it may be, we are all blessed, and we're all an even playing field here. We're all looking at the same sky. We're all looking at the same body of water. It's for everybody, and it's free. And it's something, even during the darkest hours, that you can put your arms around and really realize how fortunate we are to be here on this earth. So want to share those two words: embrace nature.
Excellent. Always meaningful stuff, Frank. Thanks so much for sharing your wisdom and your insights this week. And with that, folks, we will conclude episode 19 of the 77 Group. And we encourage you to, again, subscribe, like us, leave us your comment, and tune in next week when Frank and I will present the episode 20, talking about leadership. We'll see you then. Bye, everybody.
Okay, and thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Again, I appreciate my audience.
Amen.
Thank you.